It is common knowledge among astrophotographers that having a level tripod when employing an equatorial mount is not a requirement for good imaging. And indeed, this is true, even though I have never seen any data verifying this common belief. I wonder if this is the first YouTube video to address it. It is assumed that the guiding and polar alignment compensate for any unlevel surface angle of the tripod. But to what degree is that really true? Which of these actually negate the effects? Do they both? And are there any other issues that might arise from using an unlevel tripod? Well, over 2 recent December nights here in Yokohama, I tried to confirm this prevailing wisdom in an organized and controlled experiment. Now, you might think this is a trivial pursuit, but I actually learned several interesting facts from this exploration. I hope you stick around and check it out. Welcome to another episode of Astrophotography Japan. In the setup of my equipment for deep sky imaging, shown here, I first casually inspect the levelness of the TC40 tripod before I attached my AM5 mount. But to be honest, I usually don't give it much thought. Like you, my experience tells me that a level tripod is not so important. Mentally visualizing polar alignment mechanics on a perfectly level mount is intuitive and easy to understand. There are only 2 orientations of movement, the right ascension and declination, which you precisely calibrate in the polar alignment process. Basically, what I have done is compared arbitrarily unleveled tripod setups to a perfectly level setup. After accurate polar alignment each time, I looked to see if there were any noticeable differences in the guiding graph patterns or metrics, and I looked at the images themselves. Simple as that. In this experiment, I relied heavily on an iPhone Appli called Polarscope Alignment Pro. It is rather old and was mostly designed to support visual scope-based polar alignment, but it has a lot of other useful applications as well, like this level detection function. This is how I positioned it on my tripod to set the required surface angle for this experiment. Here you can see that this tripod is perfectly level. Shown on this slide is the tripod shown slightly off level with a 3° and 5° tilt, dipping toward the north. The fence in the background is a good reference for a nearly perfect level alignment. In this first test, I adjusted the levelness of my tripod to be misaligned in a way that it was 3.1 degrees too high in the direction of the south. I then secured it at that position and attached my AM5 mount and telescope. After focusing the Svibony SV503 80ED telescope on Capella using a Bahtinov mask, I proceeded to do a celestial north polar alignment using the ASI Air Pro application. I performed the alignment twice, and as you can see here, achieved an accuracy of about 1 arc minute. At this point, I went to the guiding workflow on the ASI Air menu and engaged guiding. My target was the M34 open cluster in the constellation Perseus. Eventually, my guiding settled into around 0.8 to 0.9 arc seconds RMS, or root mean square, which is a statistical assessment of the guide data. Having captured some photographic images and tracking data, I then returned to the home position and shut down my imaging rig. My intention was to repeat this protocol at least 2 more times. By protocol, I mean set the tripod at some particular level or unlevel angle, focus on Capella, polar aligned, engage guiding, and capture some additional image data on M34. Besides the first test shown previously, test 2 was selected to be as close to level as possible, and test 3 was selected to be similar to test 1, that is, off level by approximately 3 degrees in some other random direction. The actual Polarscope Alignment Pro Appli measurement screens for each of the tripods are shown here. Now let's look and compare the data from all three of these tripod alignments and setups to see if there are any differences in the parameters or patterns in the guiding graphs or star images. On this first comparison slide, I have included information about the tripod and the polar alignment total error measurement. With regard to polar alignment, the smaller the number the better, of course. You can see that all of these tests have a polar alignment accuracy measurement to about 1 arc-minute accuracy, which is very good. The photos shown below are each 3-minute exposures, but not the entire image captured by the ASI 533 MC Pro camera. These images are slightly zoomed in around the M34 Star Cluster. I did that to highlight the star shapes, which appear to be clear and round in each of these images. Basically, this shows that tripods with an off-level surface area up to 3 degrees can give excellent guided star images, no matter the direction of the misalignment. Now let's take a quick look at the guiding graph images from the guide menu. Unfortunately, the ASI Air provides only limited statistics on guiding, but it provides enough data from each of these M34 star images to see that the total RMS tracking errors displayed similar peak values, patterns, and statistics. Also, incidentally, these all use the same calibration file that I derived earlier in that same night. Remember, Test 1 and Test 3 are from 3-degree off-level tripod configurations. Yet the guiding profile looks very similar to Test 2, which comes from a level tripod and mount. Guiding did not seem to work any harder with the off-level tripods. This suggests, but does not prove, that it is the polar alignment that compensates for the tripod unlevelness and not the guiding function. This slide is very revealing. Here I used a level tripod for these two tests. However, I purposely misaligned the polar alignment by 3 degrees. The one on the top is 3 degrees off in right ascension, and the bottom one is 3 degrees off in declination. Again, I took 3-minute images of M34, and the full frame and zoomed image on the star cluster are shown. Amazingly, and to my surprise, with that severe polar misalignment, the images look remarkably good with no star trailing evident. But you can clearly see on the right that the guiding graph profiles look very peculiar and stressed. The system is obviously working hard to make frequent and severe corrections to keep the targets centered. If I directly compare one of these guiding graphs to the previous 3 properly polar aligned tripods I showed earlier, this is what you see. I drew yellow lines and scaled the polar misaligned graph on the right to match the same axis scales of the graphs on the left. The yellow lines are plus or minus 2 minutes from the central 0 point. Everything about this 3-degree RA misalignment guiding graph is different. I am sure you can clearly see it. So, if you are 3 degrees off on some alignment axis, either RA or DEC, or conceivably tripod levelness, guiding by itself can compensate, but it clearly pushes the system to make radical adjustments to compensate. At this point of the data collection, I thought, okay, that's good enough. I proved my point and verified the prevailing wisdom. Polar alignment and even guiding can compensate for unlevel tripods, and even misaligned polar alignments to up to at least 3 degrees. So I packed up my telescope and equipment and went home. But later, as I started to organize this video, I felt that there were a few other tests that I should have performed. On this night, I was using the all-sky polar alignment feature since I cannot see Polaris from my backyard. I have found that the current version of all-sky polar alignment works quite well for me now, under normal level tripod conditions. It has definitely been improved since some of my critical comments and the poor data I showed last year in the earlier episode 8 of Astrophotography Japan. On this night, one of the things I wanted to do was to repeat the protocol at a more extreme angle, such as a tripod that was off level by 7 degrees. But after struggling for nearly an hour, I concluded it was not possible to achieve a reliable and accurate polar alignment at that severe unlevel angle. What about 5 degrees instead? So I started over and adjusted my tripod again, this time with a 5.3 degree off-level dip toward the north. Here is a photograph of the tripod in front of a level fence in my backyard. As you can see, it is noticeably off balance. After checking focus on the star navi, polar alignment of this tripod also proved to be exceedingly difficult. It took a long time to repetitively make the fine adjustments. The problem that you encounter at these extreme unlevel angles is that the reported numbers by the ASI Air polar alignment software often jump wildly after very subtle or sensitive changes to the alignment adjustment screws. And adjusting the declination also affects the right ascension values and vice versa. It is really difficult to zero in on a low dec and low RA simultaneously. And then, if or when you achieve it, you absolutely need to recheck it because the numbers do not seem to be very reproducible. But eventually, after a frustrating 1-hour effort, I got what appeared to be a decent polar alignment with about 3 minutes accuracy, and it checked out to be pretty close on the second verification. When I established guiding on this setup, all seemed to be working fine with a reported error of about 1.1 arc seconds. As you can see here in these 3-minute full images taken with the ASI 533 MC Pro camera, the stars look very good. Shown are a guided image on the left and an unguided image shown on the right. Overall, guiding and imaging worked fine, even with a tripod off level by more than 5 degrees. Here are close-ups of the 2 full images that I just showed. The left photo taken with guiding looks great. With a highly unleveled tripod, the stars still look round even at these high magnifications. On the right, however, they are a bit more oblong. Star trails were indeed evident in this 3-minute exposure. As mentioned, it was very difficult to polar align this image due to the extremely unlevel tripod. So these slight star trail results in Test 7 are not unexpected. The Test 7 image is unguided. The polar alignment that I achieved here was about 3 arc minutes RMS error. It was the best accuracy I could get after about 1 hour of effort. I want to compare this now to an image taken on another tripod that is also about 5 degrees off target, like I did before. Let's compare the Test 7 image to a precisely level tripod that is 5 degrees off in polar alignment. And again, the tripod is level and no guiding is used. Well, this is what you see. The Test 8 image, which again is unguided, shows a tremendous amount of star trailing due to the 5-degree misalignment with the polar axis. Whereas a 5-degree off-level tripod, when properly polar aligned, shows very little star trails, almost none. This indicates that in the absence of guiding, it is the polar alignment that compensates for the unlevelness of the tripod. Guiding is supplemental. It will always improve target tracking. This final slide here shows the ideal astro imaging situation on the left, a level tripod, good guiding, and a fine imaging result, round stars and no trails. The image on the right, to my eye, shows exactly the same result. It also employed guiding, but it was taken on a tripod that was extremely off-level with a surface angle over 5 degrees. Okay, let's summarize. In EQ mode, a good polar alignment compensates effectively for unlevel tripods. the degree of severity of the unlevelness does not seem to matter. Guiding can also compensate effectively for unlevel tripods, but polar alignment does that mechanically and stably. It is a more secure solution. These next few comments are something that I learned in this study. With increasing severity of tripod unlevelness during polar alignment, polar aligned reported values using the ASIR method become increasingly inconsistent. Fine-tuning becomes very difficult. Right ascension adjustments also change declination and vice versa. At 5 degrees unlevelness and beyond, accurate polar alignment is extremely difficult to achieve. These comments are based on my experience with the all-sky polar alignment application. And interestingly, tripods off-level by 3 to 5 degrees are visually discernible to the human eye. In conclusion, I can confirm that eyeball leveling of a tripod is good enough for deep sky imaging in EQ mode. Of course, good polar alignment and guiding are implied. However, the polar alignment protocol, that is, right ascension and declination adjustments, are easier and thus can be more accurate when using a precisely leveled tripod. And finally, especially during DSO imaging nights when guiding is not being employed, I do recommend precision leveling of the tripod first to maximize your chances of achieving the best possible polar alignment. That, of course, will provide the most accurate tracking. And although we did not focus on it in this episode, a level tripod is pretty much a requirement for good Alt-Az mode tracking and imaging, like when using the C-Star S50 from ZWO or other automated smart telescopes. As for visual astronomy with a manual Alt-Az mount, it does not really matter if you have a level tripod, because you are constantly adjusting both the RA and DEC parameters in real time anyways to track an object while you're looking through the eyepiece. So thanks for hanging with me to the end of this peculiar investigation. Hopefully parts of it were instructional or educational. I appreciate your interest and support of my Astrophotography Japan channel, and I hope you decide to subscribe and join me again sometime soon. In the meantime, let me wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year from Yokohama, Japan. I'm JP Astro Guy. My name is Paul Cheesegel, and I am an astrophotographer.